Hey everyone, this is While Our Kids Are Sleeping. Erin is very, very excited about this episode. It is going to be our Lord of the Rings episode.
It is.
And for those that are watching, this is the sword I got Erin as an anniversary gift. And I think for your birthday 2 years ago, I got Gimli. Is that right?
Gimli's axe.
Gimli's
yes.
axe. And she has a whole list of other weaponry that she wants from Lord of the Rings. But
I do. And the sword for the listeners is Aragorn's sword, which was originally Isildur's sword that was broken when he cut the ring off Sauron's hand. And then it was reforged and given to Aragorn.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
yeah. So, yeah, this is going to be a Lord of the Rings episode, like I said just a second ago. Erin's excited. I pretty much stepped back and said, this is your episode. You can talk as much as you want or however much you want or anything. But everything she always told me about Lord of the Rings, it's always been pretty super cool. So this might be a bit of nerd talk. Mm-hmm. But she's gorgeous, so, we'll all listen.
Stop.
Anyways.
Also, for you who are listening and not seeing, and for you who are seeing these cups,
yes,
it's pretty funny. These are Lord of the Rings cups. When the movie The Fellowship of the Ring came out in 2001, actually December 2001, it released into theaters. Mm-hmm. And
I have
Burger King. Do you have Frodo?
I do.
I thought it was Aragorn.
I have Frodo.
I have Arwen, and I do have an Aragorn one as well up there.
I think it's up in the cabinet somewhere.
I used to have a Gandalf one too. I don't know if it got broken or what happened to it. Might still be at my mom's.
It might be.
But anyways, so Burger King had a special thing they were doing for the release of Lord of the Rings, and you could purchase these cups at Burger King. My family didn't really eat at Burger King, but we did. Mm-hmm. For these,
didn't they do the ring too?
I don't know.
I can't remember. I don't know. But yeah, when it first came out,
really
it's kind of neat. On the cup, if you it says December 2001, mm-hmm. So that must have been when everything got started. Yeah. But yeah, so Erin, you just take the lead. I will kind of weave in and out and have comments or questions or whatever. So I know it's not going to be like a breakdown of the movies.
Yeah, no, it would honestly if. You could do several different episodes about several different, topics mm-hmm. within the movies, within the books, whatever. But with the new show coming out, I mm-hmm. thought it would be kind of cool
I believe when this episode comes out, it'll be the Monday after the show
comes out, yeah.
So we're recording this a little bit ahead of time, but...
The show comes out September 2nd, so hopefully by then we've watched it and... Mm-hmm. have a idea of how we feel about the first episode. Yeah. But I kind of wanted to, I guess, start off. My mom actually sent me this article with the TV show coming up, and there's always been a lot of speculation about why aren't there more adaptions of Lord of the Rings? Yeah. And the big answer to that is through this article. I'm going to read a little bit of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's meaty. But Tolkien himself had always been deeply concerned about the adaptions of his work. So the Beatles actually wanted to do their own adaptation of the Beatles, the band.
Wow.
They wanted to do wanted to star in their own Lord of the Rings adaptation, for which they planned to recruit Stanley Kubrick as the director. And because Tolkien, I had said previously, he's always been deeply concerned about the adaptions of his work, he said no to the Beatles.
Which is insane.
Yeah, I mean
back then, and I would even say now, mm-hmm. if anything the Beatles requested, people are doing it.
Especially considering he was a British author,
mm-hmm.
And so
that's crazy.
It's crazy that something. But here's the crazier thing, and this is a question that a lot of people have always had: is why didn't Disney ever get the rights to any of Tolkien's work?
Yeah, because I think when we chatted about this before, I was like, imagine what Disney, if they would have gotten the rights, would have done like amusement park wise. Like how insane it would. I mean, what they did for Star Wars, I think would just be a tiny glimpse of what they could have done.
They could have done a whole park the size of Epcot of nothing but Lord of the Rings,
which would be insane.
It would be.
Go ahead and read.
So this is what it said. It said, however, he was more afraid of another iconic American studio that had floated the idea of adapting Tolkien's creations on multiple occasions, and that studio was none other than Disney. When there were talks about the movie rights to the books, Tolkien forbade Disney's involvement in any such projects. He wrote, "It would be advisable to let the Americans do what seems good to them as long as it was possible." There's some like dots in this, and there must be some wording in between what he's saying, but this quote looks like they were taking bits and pieces of the quote. But to veto anything from or influenced by Disney Studios for all those whose works I have a heart, he said, for all whose works I have a heartfelt loathing. He was not a fan of Disney's works.
Again, which is crazy.
Yeah, they
said
were
no
big.
to the Beatles. That was one thing. Okay, it's a band. But then you said no to Disney. And if you know Disney pretty much owns everything.
Yeah, media-wise. So they have a big stake in a lot of your news channels, ABC,
ESPN Sports. Yep. I mean, CBS, I think, is involved. ABC, stuff like you said. Crazy.
So they have a lot of stake in a lot of things. But it says Tolkien was not impressed by Disney's tendency to reduce European mythology and folklore to infantilize that. Y'all, I can't say this word.
That's all right.
To infantilized caricatures. Again, words I can't say.
I'll be honest with you did a whole lot better than what I would have done.
Yeah, so sorry guys if anybody knows what I was trying to say.
I just would have made up a word.
But he feared the studio would do the same to Lord of the Rings. The most notable difference between their respective visions is evident in their vastly different characterizations of dwarves. So you have to remember that Tolkien is, well, he's passed away obviously now, but one of the big movies that would have been out during Tolkien's time would have been Snow White. And the dwarves were not something you could take seriously. They were very childish. Everything about them, their character, the way they looked, everything was completely incorrect in general. They got the fact that they were short about right, and that was about it. But he said, in a letter to one of his fans, Tolkien explained, "I recognize Walt Disney's talent, but it has always seemed to me hopelessly corrupted. Though in most of the pictures proceeding from his studios there are admirable or charming passages, the effect of all of them to me is disgusting. Some have given me nausea." So he really did not like Disney's work.
And that's what I think why you value and you love this so much is that because he was so passionate about his books, and then he was so passionate about who would probably get their hands on them and stuff like that. So, like, I mean, just the detail. I mean, like, I remember when Lord of the Rings first came out, it was stuff that just like how they created it, the CG that was involved, which it was a very, at the beginning stages, in my opinion, I can't really think of any others, that didn't look fake.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they had hundreds of millions of people dressed up as, what are they called? The orcs.
Yeah, so they had, the way they did in the Two Towers specifically is they, at the big fight scene at the end, the Battle of Helm's Deep, they had 10,000 orcai. So what they did is they had 100 people that they did full makeup and costume of orcai, and then they CG'd and multiplied those into 10,000 people, which is insane. They did that. I mean, the makeup was insane. Can't even remember how many hours it said. And I think it was 10 hours. Took them between 8 to 10 hours to do full makeup and costume for the orcai. That's not even
filming.
No, that's just the makeup.
I mean, you probably had individuals probably up for 48 hours.
Oh yeah, between doing the makeup, the costume, and then actually having to perform in those scenes. So here comes in the question of, okay, so if Disney couldn't get the rights to it, who got the rights to the adaptations of Lord of the Rings and why? So Tolkien himself sold the rights to Lord of the Rings specifically. So this is just the trilogy. This is not any of his other works. He sold it to a company, or production company, Saul Zaent. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but it's spelled Zaentz. So Zaentz company. So parent company of Middle-earth Enterprises, responsible for selling Peter Jackson the rights to produce the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. So he initially bought the rights from Tolkien. And so that's where your animated adaptation Lord of the Rings came from. It came from his production company. And then Peter Jackson then was sold the rights. And Miramax was originally backing the production of Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings films in 1997. So they began these talks of filming and everything in 1997, but was restricted by the then owner Disney. So at the time, Miramax was owned by Disney. And Disney wanted to make it one film.
Wow.
Yeah. So they demanded that they turn the story into one film. We're talking you can't do that. The amount of information in those 3 books, you just cannot make that one movie.
Yeah.
It would be just a slap in the face to Tolkien's work. You cannot put all of that into one movie. It's just impossible unless you're going to make an 8-hour movie. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, so then they went into New Line Cinema. So whenever Tolkien passed away, his son, Christopher Tolkien, who actually worked with his father with a lot of his works, he hand drew a lot of the maps of Middle Earth, which I didn't know. He became owner of the estate. And so then he had the rights to sell do whatever he wanted. Yeah. So Amazon purchased the rights to this new TV show they're coming out with for $250 million from the Tolkien estate. Christopher Tolkien himself passed away in 2020. His wife and his nephew now are the executors of the estate. So they're the ones who sold the rights to Amazon to produce this. And Peter Jackson had no hand in this. They said it was because they didn't want it to compete with the trilogy. And so I understand that, but I think
Did he do The Hobbit?
He did do The Hobbit. Okay. And I personally wasn't a fan of the Hobbit movie adaptations. Yeah. I feel like they I think they used way too much CGI. It looked a lot like a game. Yeah. To me, like a video futuristic. Game. Yeah, really. Yeah. They stepped away from how they did The Lord of the Rings, which I guess makes sense. You're moving on.
Yeah, and I guess some of the characters, like I don't remember their names or even what they were, but some of the characters, and I know you had more of Gimli's side of people, the dwarves.
The dwarves, you had a lot more.
And so you had a lot more work in that. So I guess I can see, I 100% agree with you, because like when Lord of the Rings came out and everything was just so like, oh my gosh, it's like insane. And then the Hobbit came out years later, and it just was like, whoa, it looks like it should be the other way around kind of thing, because the Hobbit's before. But
the work that they...
terrible. It wasn't bad. It was just like, it didn't give me that warm and fuzzy feeling, or of it just, I guess, more... We got spoiled with the first three. Yeah. Lord of the Rings.
It didn't compete, in my opinion.
I think is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It kind of separates the two in a way, and
it gives. I mean, technically, The Hobbit is before Lord of the Rings, but they made the movies first, and they were way ahead of their time when they made that movie, or all 3 of them, and they filmed them all consecutively at the same time. Yeah. So it was a very lengthy process. I mean, you got to think they started talks of it in 1997, and the Fellowship of the Ring was released in 2001. So they filmed these movies, and then they had to edit them. I think that they filmed them all at the same time because it was going to take them so long in the editing process to do what they needed to do. But so that's where that came about. But I think a lot of it too had contract issues. So he was technically had the rights to just work on the trilogy. And this TV show is about the world before The Hobbit, before The Lord of the Rings. So you're going to get your Elrond and your Galadriel, you'll actually see an actual Isildur. You'll get his story. I'm sure you have to see Gandalf because he was I'm pretty sure he was part of it previous in those works. Maybe they don't.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
Maybe they're keeping that really quiet and he'll be at the end, towards the end. I don't know.
I can't remember. I actually don't think he was part of this. I don't think he was around prior to. Yeah, I think this was prior to Gandalf.
Before he established himself.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. But Galadriel's definitely going to be a part of it, and Elrond and Isildur. You're going to really get some backstory on everything. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do, because Tolkien did a lot more than just The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
He wrote series of books that predated those, that were in the same world. He also wrote the Silmarillion, which is stories of what was going on the 60 years in between the end of The Hobbit and the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. Didn't necessarily follow.
So the show's not about that?
No.
Wow.
No, this is before The Hobbit.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is
kind of like how the rings came about.
This is the original about how
Okay.
your rings came about. So your 3 that went to the elves, the 7 that went to the dwarves, and the 9 that went to the men, and then your 1 that rules them all.
One ring that rules them all.
Yep.
So like a lot of people are probably sitting here going like, wow, it's just a different kind of fan talk. And this is Erin. This is what she does. She reads, she just gets information, and then this is her being excited about talking about it. Like most people, they'll be like, oh, I love it because of this, I love it because of that. Like you are more deep into like, okay, the making of it, why it was created, how it's created, stuff like that. So I just think it's cool. It's very fascinating. I think a lot of people love this side of the Lord of the Rings too. Some don't even have a clue. Like I knew that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were good friends. I liked C.S. Lewis. I will say I'm nowhere close to being into Chronicles of Narnia like you are Lord of the Rings, but I liked it. Like it was a book. I liked the characters, and it's definitely more at a younger age too, because it's easier to understand. But you could kind of see the similarities between the two guys, and so it's pretty cool. But
they bounced ideas off each other a lot.
Yeah.
They were like you said, they were good friends.
Yeah.
I guess mentored each other almost.
Yeah.
I would say, but it is very fascinating to learn about the different ways and how movies become what they are, especially when you have something you're working off of, like a novel. When you have a base work that someone's already created this world, and you're going in and you have to do that world correctly. You have to live up to this author's ability or his creative ability. So I think that's why he was so scared to ever sell his work to people, because what are they going to do to it? And that's what I'm nervous about now, is media has become so, I don't know how to say this without maybe hurting some people's feelings, but it's become extremely worldly in terms of, and what I mean by worldly is they've taken things to the extreme.
Yeah.
And they've made it to where it's almost impossible to enjoy a movie, because it's constantly throwing political things in your face. Like they want to shove their political beliefs in your face so hard that you can't even like your main character, because they're constantly just spouting out things that you're like, I came to this movie to get away from all that other stuff that's going on in the news and your social medias. I want to live in a whole other world right now. And I'm nervous.
And especially something like Lord of the Rings. It's fantasy. It's, a beautiful story that's been written by, an awesome dude. But I'm a little nervous too. I officially watched the trailer. I don't know why. I've been kind of holding back watching anything about it, because I was like, you know what? I just want to wait until it comes out. We can sit down, pop some popcorn, and we can just in silence watch it, because that's usually how we watch it. Stuff like that. But it worried me when they brought up the words based off of the Tolkien's work, The Lord of the Rings, or something. It was worded like that, based. And I'm like, oh, Lordy, what does this mean? But I would say, just like you said, I would hope that his family would respect him. and in a way of giving the rights to somebody to create something that has his name on it, these creators would be respectful to him to make it as close as possible. Mind you, I know you have a massive 800, 900 page book. You're not going to get everything in it. I mean, but
these are multiple, and I don't know if they're going to be based off of the multiple books that he had written previously, or if they're just taking the concept of this world prior to, they're taking the whole story of Sauron and Isildur and all them, and they're kind of building off of it into their own mindset or whatever they've decided to do into their own screenwrite. But I am nervous because there are many ways that you can disrespect Tolkien's work nowadays. And it's because he was so, he based his work so heavily off of the Bible and his Christian beliefs that our world is honestly just so opposite of the Christian values nowadays that they could easily go in and ruin his work. And that's why he was always so scared.
Well, yeah, I mean,
is because he wrote these books that mirrored a lot of your things that happened in the Bible, a lot of your events, a lot of your characters, because he was honestly in love with Jesus Christ, and he had outwardly had a relationship, a faith and belief in Jesus and in God and the Bible. Like he had to have studied the Bible.
It's evident like you said,
work.
in characters and stuff like that. Because I mean, like, again, not to plug C.S. Lewis, but he's very similar, and they did a lot of work together. I mean, they probably did Bible studies together.
Probably.
I mean, they probably, hey, never mind.
They were definitely the ones who read the Bible, but they didn't just read them. They digested. They looked up.
And you could tell in their work and their writing and stuff like that, which like it's just beautiful. I mean, like anybody that's a creator, or somebody that even like a builder or something like that. Like I think I kind of go back to like wanting scared to sell his stuff or his rights or to somebody. It would be tough for us to create something like a wedding film or something like that, and then we go, hey, here's everything, just do what you want with it. I mean, it would just be tough because we put our blood, sweat, and tears in our business, filming a wedding or even an event or just all the films that we put together. Like we really sit here and edit and like rewatch it 18 million times just to make sure that, okay, this looks good, because we know it's going to have our name on it at the end of the video. So I think it's kind of cool. That he loved his work, and and he wanted it to stay true to how he wrote it and everything like that. So I think it's kind of neat. I mean, and I love it because you're passionate about it, and I really get into it, and that's something I think is cool about us, is like when we like something, we hear the other person talk about it, and then we start liking it. Now, mind you, I have a Lord of the Rings tattoo. The phrase that Bilbo said, it's not a bad thing to live a simple life. Was that Bilbo? Okay, you're just looking at me like it wasn't Bilbo. I got nervous. I was like, I've been telling people it's Bilbo. But I love it. I think it's cool. But yeah. So I want to ask you something. So let's try to make it quick. What's one of just your favorite things about Lord of the Rings? It could be as a whole. It can be a moment. It could be the first thing that comes in your head. I really like this character because it reminds me of this, that, and the other, or what. So just give me something. Go.
That is so hard. I think for me it's nostalgic. But in general, I like this idea of this great adventure that you have people, it's like you've got Frodo, you have so many different storylines throughout this movie that you're following. And you've got your center storyline, which is Frodo and Sam, and technically Gollum / Smeagol because he's bipolar. And they are taking this ring to Mordor. That's your center focus. And you have all these outside elements that are going on to keep them on that path. Without the Fellowship having split up at the end of the first movie and going off into their different adventures to keep this common goal in motion of them destroying this ring without those different storylines taking their own respective paths.
Yeah.
He never would have made it to Mordor.
That's crazy.
And I like this idea that you have all these people working in tandem for this one goal. And you don't know. Like, Frodo didn't know what was going on. Sam didn't know what was going on. They weren't sure if their friends were dead or alive.
They were going through hell themselves.
Yeah.
So they're just like trying to get out of it.
Trying to get out of the Misty Mountains and trying to, get through the swamplands. Like, it was just insane to see. And then you see how different characters crossed each other's paths even though they didn't see each other.
Yeah.
Like when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are searching for Merry and Pippin, who were kidnapped by the Orcai to take to Saruman. They happened upon got to Rohan, and they happened upon the army of Rohan and one of your, I guess, side characters, Éomer, who was next in line to take over for Rohan because his uncle's son had just died. He was leading the Rohirrim, which is the army, off, and they ran into him. And they were like, we mean you no harm. We're looking for these hobbits. They would look like children to you. Have you seen them? And they were traveling with the Orcai, and he said, I'm sorry, but we killed all the Orcai last night, and we left none alive. So technically, they passed Merry and Pippin's paths. They crossed their paths and didn't even know it because Merry and Pippin had escaped and went into the Fangorn forest while all this was happening. And then Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas go to the site where they had burned all the carcasses, and they
find his belt with that holds his little dagger.
Yeah, and they thought,
you proud of me?
I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you remember that. And they thought that they were dead, and then Aragorn was able to follow the trail where they had made imprints into the ground into Fangorn Forest.
Because that's when they went and hung out with the tree guy.
That's where he hung out with Treebeard, yes.
It's Treebeard?
His name is Treebeard.
Oh. I didn't know he had a name. I thought it was Tree.
No, he has a name. He's got a name.
You learn something every day.
But then that's when they run into... Good Lord, have mercy.
I just think you're just so passionate about this.
I know.
I love it. I really do.
I know people are probably getting bored with it by now, but basically what happened, they went into Fangorn Forest and they came upon a resurrected Gandalf. They thought when they said...
that scene, if you've never seen it, is insane.
Yeah.
Like when he looks up, because didn't Gandalf kind of not realize who he was? Like he was figuring it out, but he became Gandalf the White.
He did.
So
Saruman was originally what they called the White Witch, but he was the White Wizard, and he went dark. Obviously, power corrupted him, and so when they went into the forest, and the Treebeard or one of the whatever said that the White Witch, whatever, is in here, and they're thinking this is Saruman. We're about to be facing up against Saruman, and
they drew their swords.
They drew their swords and everything, and
their axe,
and it's Gandalf, and they said. They said Gandalf, and he said, that's what they used to call me.
Yeah.
Gandalf the Grey. And then you go through he tells them, I saw Merry and Pippin, and I sent them on a different path.
Yeah.
We have this other path to go on. So
just so crazy.
It's crazy.
Like you said.
Yeah.
Funny note, for the longest time, until we started talking, I don't even think you realized it, because then I caught it. I thought he was Gandalf the Great, not Gandalf the Gray. And so, this whole time I was like, Gandalf the Great.
You're not wrong.
I mean, Gandalf the Great.
Yeah,
He's the Great. And then, we were talking, and you're like, yeah, Gandalf the Grey. And then I think even, was it in The Hobbit when there was, another wizard that was, brown?
There's a brown wizard, yep.
Yeah. And
there's
I was
a blue wizard, too. You never see it in Lord of the Rings, but there's a blue wizard, a white wizard, a gray wizard, and a brown wizard.
That's crazy. Blue, we've seen all of them but blue, right?
We haven't seen blue.
Yeah, because the brown one rides. Does he ride rabbits?
Yeah, or something like that. I
So
can't remember.
crazy.
It was crazy.
Just that's awesome. I don't know. I've always loved, to kind of go on a side note, I've always just loved stories that kind of just break out, and they like break out and they have just a bunch of just branches of different stories.
Yeah.
And then they can all come back together and are just like, you know, you have 4 main characters. They're all going through their 4 adventures, and then somehow they come together to either end or to move on to the next thing. Like, I really love Stranger Things. There's a lot of that happens in Stranger Things. Game of Thrones had that. And literally, as you're talking about it, I'm like, the people that wrote Game of Thrones, and they probably would correct me, sounds like they took a lot out of the Lord of the Rings books.
Well, so did J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote all the Harry Potter books. She even said that he was one of her, influence. I guess influences for her work with Harry Potter. But one of the other things I love so much about Tolkien's work is finding the similarities in his work and in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it's just more of like an informational thing. You don't even have to be, I feel like, a Christian to realize that this man is mirroring Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Gandalf, who died and then rose again, technically, which is mirroring Jesus, who was crucified and then 3 days later rose again. Now, it's not going to be perfectly mirroring anything.
No, but I mean, it's a good
example of what he was trying to do in that. And then you could draw the parallel because they were leaving Middle Earth because they're like, our time here is done. It's time for the men to do their work. And they went off to the Grey Havens or to the west, which is also going to be your parallel to like the Garden of Eden or to heaven. You could literally say there, but they were going there to live out eternity because the elves were immortal. So they would live forever once they left Middle Earth and went on to the west.
It's crazy. It's
awesome.
Awesome.
Crazy how it works, how that goes, and Gandalf ends up doing that too. And what I really liked is how Bilbo and Frodo also got normally this would not happen, but because they had been ring bearers and had not been corrupted by the ring, in totality. I mean, obviously it did corrupt them to a point, but it never fully corrupted them. And they
were able to give the ring away.
They were able to finally part with it.
Yeah, they could part with it without.
Which Frodo wouldn't have been able to do that without Sam.
Yeah,
Frodo would not have been able to live, to do anything without Sam. Sam was your ace. He was your underrated ace in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Most underrated character, I feel like, because he was, if you want to say a GOAT of Lord of the Rings, Sam was your GOAT of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I really feel that way.
Yeah.
But,
I agree.
But it was really interesting that because they had...
Share the load. Share the load.
Because they had been... They had been ring bearers. They were gifted the opportunity to travel to the West and live out the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Live out eternity.
Yeah.
With the elves, and Gandalf, like I said, Gandalf went, and they don't show this in the movie, but in books after Lord of the Rings and everything, eventually once Sam's children grow up and his wife passes away, they send a boat back for him to also go to the West, because he also did carry the ring for Frodo during those final, moments. And you could almost call him a ring bearer because, like I said, he's the one that made sure Frodo got to where he needed to go and made sure that he was able to let go of that ring to destroy that last shred of evil. But it's just very interesting how all of that played out. I know you're laughing at me now.
I'm not laughing at you. I did say, hey, real quick.
I know, real quick.
30 minutes
but
later.
But I got one more thing. One more thing.
Yeah, one more thing. You go. This is your episode.
This is something.
LOTR, one ring to rule them all. Erin's episode.
Okay. So this is something that I feel like a lot of people get wrong, and I don't know if they're just doing it because they think it's funny or whatever. But Eowyn She was Theoden's King Theoden's, which was the king of Rohan, and then she was his niece, which makes her Éomer's sister. She kills the Nazgul at the Return of the King. He's trying to feast on her uncle, and she's fighting him, and he says, "No man can kill me," and she says, "I am no man," sticks the sword and, kills him. So everyone's like, oh, this is a feminist approach to whatever. And I'm like, okay, listen, modern day feminism played no role in that scene, played no role in Éowyn as a character whatsoever, because what happened there had nothing to do with feminism whatsoever. This had to do with an unlikely character or an underdog coming out. But I really think what had more to do with it is he's saying no man can kill me because the Nazgul were the original 9 ring bearers, the 9 men who had been fully corrupted by their power, is that women have a different nature, nurture, and soul than men do. Like, women are, I feel like, in general, more self-sacrificing than men, and that has to do with their more nurturing nature.
The mother side,
their mothering side. So, like, throughout the movies, she always expressed her interest in wanting to fight. She knew how to sword fight. She wanted to defend her people. She wanted to be in the midst of it. But there's a time for everything. So, like, you're fighting Helm's Deep. She wanted to be fighting with them. And her uncle said, no, your place is with the women and the children and the people who cannot fight because they need a leader. They need somebody that can lead them out if the Uruk-hai come in. And though she couldn't fight, she was very much needed in that role. She was a leader of those people. If something happened to King Theoden, and then right at that time her brother was gone, the whole Rohirrim was off because they had left because of some other things going on, and if I go into that, we will be here for an hour. But so she's his last line of defense here. If he dies, someone has to take over the throne, and that's that. He was looking at her, you have to lead our people. They need somebody as a leader in the back to keep them calm and to lead them out. And so she had that moment, and she's like, you're right, this is where I need to be. And that is where she needed to be at those time. And then in the Return of the King, her and Mary the Hobbit, they both wanted to fight.
Excuse me. And
they said no to her because she was a female, and they don't want to sacrifice their women on the battlefield. I mean, why would you? And then you have Mary, that they were just saying you would die. Like, you're small, all these people are big. You're a hobbit. It's not going to work out. And this was a story of unlikely characters banding together. She gets on a sword. She pretends to be a guy. She gets Mary on the horse with her, and she's like, "We're going to do this, and I'm going to protect you." Those were her words to him: "Is I'll protect you." And so that's again her nurturing ability to come out and see the need here that he wants to fight and I want to fight. We're going to protect each other. And I'm going to look out for you. And then she gets in the midst of this battle, and then this happens with King Theoden again. Like I said, the Nazgul preys on him, knocks him down. He's about to kill him and let his, Nazgul eat him. And she stops this from happening. And this, again, was a self-sacrificing moment for her. Because, again, I feel like women are more self-sacrificing for men. Men have this, like, survival mode because men are usually the head of the family. They have to provide for their family. So if they're not alive to do it, they can't do it. So they have this instinct to survive at all costs. I feel like humans have that instinct in general, but men have it in a more driving force. Whereas if a woman sees somebody in need, they are more likely to sacrifice for that person than a man, especially their children or especially a loved one. And that's what she did in that moment. And I think her not being a man, it doesn't really ever explain that, but I feel like it didn't have anything to do with feminism. I think it had all to do with the purity of the soul of the person killing him, is that she was sacrificing herself to kill him.
Yeah, yeah.
So that she could protect her uncle, even though her uncle was already dying. But she was, in general, that's a big moment for a woman in the movie, period.
Yeah.
Sure, girl power, whatever, but let's not take that moment and try to call it modern day feminism because it's 100% not. Like, I don't think, I'm not going to get to that. But anyways, that's just not how I saw it. I saw it as self-sacrifice.
No, I correct me because I don't want to explain it. You saw it as somebody that was an underdog that didn't seem like had any value compared to some of these other lead characters that are stronger and mightier and have maybe some powers or something like that, and that was able to come in and basically conquer the biggest enemy, the biggest guy that was in front of them
at the time.
At the time, in a way, and you can, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of like saying you can face any, Goliath.
It's your David and Goliath moment.
You can
almost.
You can face your any Goliath in front of you and defeat it, no matter who you are, And I do like the side of it, like you said, like her and Mary together fought together because there were two people that didn't probably feel like they had much value to anybody or gave any value, but they just still were like, you know what, this is our family, these are our friends, these are people that we that represent us and give us opportunities to. And
in every battle throughout Lord of the Rings, the good were definitely outnumbered by the bad, and so they're like, we are able-bodied, we are outnumbered, we want to fight for our loved ones. Everyone else is fighting, everyone else has a job, and we want something to do. And I don't think this diminished her womanly nature whatsoever, because she does go on to live and then get married. And
who does she marry?
She marries Boromir's brother. Why can I not think of his name?
Oh man, I think I have the face. I just can't think of the name.
I feel like I have to look it up now, or I'm doing an injustice to her. But she marries Boromir, who was technically
Boromir, which was he led another. Who did he lead? Wow.
Boromir died, so he was Sean Bean.
Right. Yeah, Sean Bean. Yeah.
Poor Sean Bean dies and everything.
Can't last longer.
He can't. Faramir, his brother was Faramir.
Yeah.
So Denethor was their father, and he was technically the steward of Gondor. Gondor is your main kingdom, and that's what Aragorn is technically the line for. So that was Isildur was the king of Gondor, and Aragorn was the last descendant of Isildur. So technically, he would be the king of Gondor. Well, when you don't have a king, you have to have a steward that maintains order. And that's essentially what he was. So Boromir would have eventually became the steward, but he died. And then Faramir would have eventually became, but because, Aragorn, became king, that didn't happen. Yeah. But I believe they did end up getting land to rule. So they did have like a little kingdom maybe of their own. I feel like that was something that I read. But she did marry him. Aramir also, I think, got married. I think he did actually get to run Rohan, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, that was just something that I thought was interesting that a lot of people try to misconstrue.
Well, okay, we're going to stop you before you keep going again.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
It's probably going to be our longest episode yet, and that's okay. But let's go into our favorite 5. I thought it would be neat to do our favorite 5 characters from Lord of the Rings. I don't want to dip into The Hobbit just because I don't really. I mean, there are some guys that are in there cool and all, but I feel like Lord of the Rings is what we know best.
Yep.
Or I know best. So, real quick, you'll go first. I'll go second, just so I can kind of get my thoughts together while you talk. Favorite 5. Lord of the Rings characters, and you're just going to go through them. 1 sentence or 2 of why you like them, not like 30 minutes each. But yeah, go ahead. Favorite 5 Lord of the Rings character.
Okay.
Favorite 5 Lord of the Rings characters. What?
Lord of the Rings characters.
There you go. Thank you, love. Go ahead and go. Just go.
All right, 5 is Gimli.
Gimli. Okay, remind me. That's the
dwarf that's in the Fellowship.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm going to say my 4th one because I'm combining them. Well, I'm not combining them as in one, but there's a reason why I like them both.
Are you combining 5 and 4?
No,
or
I'm
2
saying
people in one?
They're 2. No, I'm saying I have a 5 and a 4, and the reason I like them is combined.
Legolas.
Legolas is my number 4.
You know, it's funny. I was going through my list, and I was like, I love them 2 together.
Yes.
Them 2 together are so awesome. They're 2 totally different characters.
Well, technically, so elves and dwarves have bad blood.
Yeah, I know.
They have bad blood. So they
become great friends.
Best friends,
Best friends,
and
which is awesome.
One of the lines in Two Towers, they're about to fight the 10,000 Orcai, and Gimli says, I never thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf. And Legolas says, what about side by side with a friend?
I mean,
that's a big moment.
Such a good moment.
It's such a good moment for them. Good. And then they always compete about like who's killing the most Orcai.
You hear them counting throughout.
Yeah, and they're like, I've got 17. Well, I've got 20.
Yeah.
And but there was a lot of comedic relief within them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But it's awesome to see like your almost 2 enemies come together and they become best friends.
Yeah.
So I just love them together. I love them individually, and I love them together.
Awesome. 5 Gimli, 4 Legolas.
Yep. And I have to
3.
say, Gimli became one of my favorite because I used him in a video game, for the Two Towers video game, to win the battle of Helm's Deep.
Nice.
In the video game. I tried like 5 times. I tried with Aragorn. I tried with Legolas. And I'm like, this is not working. I'm like, well, I'll just throw Gimli in there.
That's awesome.
And I won. And I was like, yes.
Nice.
Anyway, so number 3.
This number 3 is Erin.
I know. It doesn't matter.
You're just excited.
I'm just excited. It's Pippin.
Wow. Cool.
I know.
I like that. I really like that.
Pippin was just so
well, question. Pippin was the one that touched the I'm gonna call it the big black like ball, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The seeing eye, one of the seeing.
And then he sang the song, beautiful voice. But yeah.
Oh yeah. I liked him because again, he's all of your hobbits are underdogs almost, but he just like everyone looked at him as kind of like, you know, the jokester, the funny guy, smokes way too much long bottom leaf and you know, whatever. And I just thought that he had such a good character build. He started off really immature, and he really you know, learned so much throughout. He's just a really good character build in general. You just saw a lot of growth in him. All right. And then my number 2 is it's Gandalf.
Okay.
Gandalf. All right. I don't feel like there's an explanation that needs to be done there. Like
it's Gandalf.
It's Gandalf. That's all. And if you don't know number 1, Sam.
Frodo. I'm just kidding.
Are you serious? No.
I knew you're good. So wait. Aragorn's not in your top 5? Our favorite 5?
He is.
You just said Sam for your number 1.
He's my actual number 1.
Oh,
I can't pick 5. Listen, he's tied with Sam for number 1, and that was gonna be a big surprise.
Somehow, favorite 5 turned into Erin's favorite 7.
God, it's 6.
No.
Okay.
Gimli, you're right. You're right.
6.
Sorry, apologies. 6.
Okay, I was gonna have a number 1, and then I was gonna go like
your 1.1 is Aragorn, 1.2 is Sam. Real quick, go through them.
Okay, Sam. I feel like I explained this earlier. He's a goat. Like,
yes.
He was thrown in because Gandalf's like Frodo needs somebody there for him.
The best introduction of him is while he's listening.
Yeah,
and
he's like, I'm not eavesdropping. I swear, I was just cutting some grass on the window there.
Yeah,
and I just quoted that. Sorry. Well, that was kind of the point. Okay. But anyway, so that was literally the line from it, and he's like, okay, well, your punishment is to go with him to deliver this ring. And
after hearing everything, you kind of have to be involved now,
yeah, so. I mean, this is it. You're going. And he took the words that Gandalf said true. He said, you know, don't let anything happen to him. You follow him.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, I'm going to do what Gandalf said. So when Frodo tries to just go off by himself, Sam's like, nope, Gandalf told me I've got to stick with you and I can't let anything happen to you. And I'm going by what Gandalf said. And honestly, without him, the ring never would have made it to Mordor. It never would have been destroyed. Honestly, just...
Goat.
Yeah. I mean...
Cool.
Period. And then
Aragorn.
That just really, again, speaks for itself. He's Aragorn. Again, he had a lot of character growth, too, because he starts off not wanting anything to do with taking over Gondor. He had lived his life as a ranger.
Yeah.
Technically, he was 80 years old at some point in this movie. The timeline is
a good-looking 80-year-old.
I know, right? Well, he was part of the Dunedain, blessed with long life. So he lives to be 500 years old.
Erin thinks she has
3
that,
to 500
too.
years. Listen, okay, anyways.
She'll be 30 in 2 years.
Listen, some of us don't really age like that. And I just think that some of us should realize that I might be 30, but I'll still be 20. Okay?
Okay, moving on.
Anyways,
so let's just go through your list. We know Aragorn's phenomenal. We've talked about him before. 5 Gimli, 4 Legolas, 3 Pippin, 2 was Gandalf, and then Aragorn and Samwise as your 1 and 1.2. Awesome.
I mean, I'll forever see the scene at the end of the Return of the King when all 4 of the hobbits are lined up and Aragorn walks and he said, "You bow to no one," and he gets down.
So freaking
I want to
epic.
cry every time
epic.
I see that.
Yeah,
it's such an epic moment.
I truly didn't really I just see the brilliance and respect the films until sitting down with you and talking about them.
Yeah.
Because then I see it and I'm like, whoa, this is insane. Just the small details of the films.
Yeah.
And so,
because you just don't, that's just not something you see. You don't see men bowing down to hobbits.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It's not. Yeah.
So I'll do mine. I'm going to try to, I have a couple names and I have some that are great reasons, some that aren't, but number 5 is going to be a 2-person since you did it for your number 1, and that is Gimli and Legolas. Definitely, I think both of them separate are okay. I think together, just epic duo. I mean, just hilarious, funny, literally just epic to see the two.
It's like you can't
together.
think of one without thinking about the other.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's my 5, and I'll 5.1, 5.2, whatever. 4 may shock you a little. Eowyn.
There's no R in it.
Mainly because, although I always joke around with her saying she was just really thirsty for Aragorn, but I do love that last part.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought it up. It's just like she was a underdog. She was somebody that, loved and was passionate about her family and her people, that she would sacrifice herself, and that she saw value in Mary and was like, Mary, let's do this together. So I think she's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
I liked her. Number 3, Mary.
Okay.
Loved Mary. Loved the guy that played Mary. He was also in Lost. I can't think of his name right now, but he was in the show Lost also. Just just a great actor. I know this is kind of the beginning of his acting career. Maybe not, or just the big stage, if you want to call it that. But just from always getting Pippin a little bit out of trouble, or creating trouble for Pippin to get into, the fireworks and all that. But all the way till the end, when the scene I will always remember is when he stands up and he grabs his sword and he runs and he charges, and you see this little hobbit just running by. It's just loved his heart, loved how he was true to his friends and his hobbit people. Just thought he was epic. Again, I'm going to say epic a lot, but I thought he was a really awesome character.
He was the one in the Two Towers that told Treebeard to go towards
just kind of really
Saruman,
smart. One of those smart characters that you just kind of missed because you think of him just smoking the pot all the time.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Anyways. Number 3 was Mary. Number 2, I'm going to. These last 2 are tough because I have a few that I would like, but Aragorn is hands down just amazing. Number 2, definitely that guy. I mean, all the way from the second we see him as Strider, the Ranger. I might have said that totally wrong.
Strider, yeah, the Ranger. You got
But all the way to the end when he honors, Frodo and them by saying, "You bow to no one," like we just mentioned. Just like every piece, and he never fell for the ring. I mean, he had one moment where he looked at it.
Frodo had just run away from Boromir in the first one and first movie, and he said, "You take it. I can't do this. You take it."
Yeah.
And he folded his hand over and he said,
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Which is insane.
Because he knows. He knows.
He knows
what it would do. And the thing, Boromir wasn't a bad character. He wanted to save his people, and he knew that the ring just called to him more. Some people had a weaker, had a bigger desire for power and a weaker
being able to control it.
Exactly. And so Aragorn just had a lot of self-control there, and he honestly just had a heart that I just feel like he just had a different kind of mentality, different kind of heart there.
Yeah.
And so he knew that this temptation is too much for me. You need to take it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I think, and I like Éomer. I mean, not my favorite 5, but I thought that his character,
he's a good character,
great character. But
Aragorn was also the one that told Frodo, basically said, "This is too much of a temptation. You know what you need to do." And this is where he knew that Frodo was going off on his own.
Yeah.
He knew that this was the time and the place that this was going to happen.
It's happened. So Aragorn number 2. Number 1, I just can't go again say anybody else but Gandalf. Gandalf is my number 1. Just all the way from the first second you see him and the character and how a wizard's never late or early. He shows up precisely on time.
A wizard is never late, Mr. Frodo, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
Yeah, exactly. So from that moment all the way to the end when he's driving, riding the white horse up the daggum castle with his staff. I mean, it's just amazing. Throws down the staff, just destroying people. You see him up in the hills at Helm's Deep, and just amazing.
That's one of the most iconic moments, is at the Battle of Helm's Deep when you think all hope is lost, and Gandalf shows up on the 5th day.
And who
look
does
to the
he
east
represent?
at sunrise. Yeah, exactly.
And who does he represent? Our Savior, which is it's just beautiful character, beautiful guy. Beautiful guy.
I mean,
beautiful.
Ian,
what I'm
McKellen
saying.
would thank you for that.
But yeah, I just love it. I think all those characters are great. Like I said, Sam, it was very, very hard not to put him in.
But I put him in, so it's okay.
You put him in. Frodo, I think, is Frodo.
I would say watchable wise, although I like Sean Astin, and Frodo's such an integral part. I mean, not Frodo. Sam's such an integral part in this movie. Is watchable wise, he's not my number 1.
Yeah,
and that's why Aragorn's there, because when I'm watching the movie. Even though I want to see what's going on with Sam and Frodo, I'm always more so wanting to know what's going on with Aragorn and Legolas
and the boys and what they're up to.
Yeah,
what they're doing.
Essentially, that's always more where my mind drifted to. Even though I did also want to know what was going on with Sam and Frodo, I just didn't want to stay there too long. I always wanted to go back to.
Yeah, you always kind of want to go back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think it was a great favorite 5. I'm interested to see what the people think. I know that the new series on Amazon is already out. It's 2 or 3 days old. I don't know if we'll do an episode. Maybe we'll mention it in the next episode briefly or whenever it comes out. When we see it and we do a podcast for it. Anyways. But yeah, kind of excited, also very nervous like you. I can't imagine how you feel. I'm
so nervous they are going to take it and just butcher it, but
let's have great hope that it'll be good. But so that was a great episode. It's pretty sick. I think a lot of people are not going to know a lot of what you chatted about and stuff like that. That was a great favorite 5, and
if I got anything wrong or I said something wrong, I'm sorry. It is late and I am tired.
But yeah, before we go, just remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Kind of trying to do some fun stuff there. And I might create us a TikTok. I think it's just going to help to get the word out of while our kids are sleeping.
Now, guys, by the time this comes out, he might have already
I probably have already done it.
made a TikTok.
I'm actually consider doing it tonight before I go to bed. But
so henceforth,
yeah,
it will,
because this will come out on September 20.
No,
20, September 5th.
Yeah.
So, anywho, thank you all for watching. Again, like I said, subscribe, follow, like, listen on Apple Podcasts and
if you
Spotify.
made it this entire episode, thank you.
Thank you. Y'all are awesome. I will say this, and then we'll be done. I've had a lot of people come up and say, hey, love the podcast. Y'all are doing great. And it's exciting. It's just really fun. So everyone that's watched it, even if you just only watched one episode, thank you for watching. We love doing this. This is a good time.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Our listeners.
Watching, listening. She's always got my back on that. So all the listeners out there, I know there's probably more listeners than watchers.
That's
so,
true.
But yeah, we will see y'all next time. And this was while our kids were sleeping.
Yep. Every time.
Every time.